Now we're turning our attention to the Indian IT sector. It could be looking at a decline in headcount, and this in the current financial year. We've been compiling some data from the biggest IT firms, and the trend seems pretty clear that the number of people working in Indian IT firms, some of the biggest IT firms in India, the headcount has seen a decline this year, and this decline in workforce is happening for the first time in a span of 25 years, which is why it's significant. And it's happening at a time when Narayana Murthy ignited that debate as well, urging young Indians to put in 70 hours of work every week. But now the question is there enough work for these young engineers? Or is it time for them to look beyond the IT sector? Let's discuss this. Rituparna Chakraborty is the co-founder of Teamlease. She is joining us on the show along with independent market expert Mahantesh Sabarad. Great to have you both with us. Rituparna, to you first. Only last week I was discussing this about what Infosys founder Narayana Murthy had said about the need for India's youth to clock in 70 hours a week. And that stimulated a lot of discussion, a lot of disagreements as well. And many of them, I reckon, are turning around now at this point, looking at this data, showing that one of the key economic growth sectors of India, the tech sector, is showing a shrinkage of headcount. It's happening for the first time in 25 years. They're probably saying, where are the jobs for us to put in all that hard work into?
Yeah, thanks, Vikram. First and foremost, I think we all know the intent behind Mr. Murthy's statement, and I don't think he was talking just about the IT sector.
No, of course not.
He was probably addressing all youth across India.
True.
And I think one of the biggest shifts that we have to do, and honestly, in society, in the economy per se, is that for the longest time, and of course, for the lack of better options, we've looked at IT as a net employment generator. And now suddenly we see that all changing, and as it must, because technology is if the technology essentially becomes the sole contributor of jobs in a country, it's inevitable the kind of efficiencies, the kind of automations that a technology industry is always constantly pursuing. It's just too much, honestly, in the long run to ask for. And I've been talking about this for years now, that this always looking up to the technology sector. And I know there was a point when the technology sector became this...
Yes. But are you saying that the sector is not adapting enough to the changing environment? Is that the reason?
I think it's not. I think it's way beyond our pay grade right now to give a judgment on the sector. I think the sector is going through an unprecedented moment in terms of the kind of effect that the world affairs are having on the sector. And because of which, I think some of the initiatives, some of the steps that are being taken by the sector to kind of ensure that they're able to survive and then pursue sustainable growth, we're seeing the outcome of all of that. I think the picture that we have to all pursue is that the future, the youth of today, what is it that they're going to do? Because I think for the longest time, even within homes, the conversation always have been how to get yourself a job in the
Yes, of course. But Rituparna, is this specific to India? The kind of shrinkage?
Look, India always had the largest chunk of the technology jobs worldwide. We all know that. And India has been the torchbearer when it comes to technology talent.
Yes.
So I guess what's happening to the Indian industry, tech industry, is essentially the effect of what's happening across the globe.
Sure.
So a lot of it is external, and a lot of it is a choice that is being exercised by the tech industry to kind of be able to survive the long haul.
Right.
And to be honest, I don't think ever a technology industry, things will become brighter. Things will change. I'm very confident.
So you're saying that this is a period of transition. So, of course, at this point in time, we understand, and Mahantesh, you need to come in on this. We understand that the US, Europe, they're cutting their discretionary spending, and they're trying to tackle a slowdown in economic growth, but the size of deals could have shrunk too, and this could put pressure on margins. But recently, we've been talking about the resilience of the American economy, Mahantesh. We reported their GDP numbers. So surely this is a phenomenon that the IT sector has experienced in the past, where there are these headwinds. But does that sufficiently explain to you the shrinkage in the headcount?
No, I think there are two issues that we should examine here. Why is there a shrinkage in the headcount? Is simply because IT industries survive on two things: volume and pricing. Volume is the headcount number is what translates into essentially volume for them. More the number of employees, more is the service deliverable that you can give out in terms of capacity. But if the pricing is not sustainable enough, then what really happens is many of these IT companies are seeing a large amount of deal wins already happening, but the pricing that is coming in is not too lucrative for them to really manage those deals. So what do? What when a company is facing an issue related to a pricing crunch, they necessarily will have to also look at reducing the headcount such that the cost related to the headcount comes down and they maintain that sufficient margin gap. I think that is the phenomenon that we are witnessing right now.
Sure.
Most of the IT services companies are now facing a margin kind of issue. I'm not talking in terms of EBIT margins. It's really about gross margin issues that they're facing.
Yeah.
And the pricing trends seem to suggest that the headcount shrinkage is something that the industry is opting for to maintain their margin trajectory ahead.
Right. But there are some companies. I'm looking at certain reports. L&T Tech Services. That company, for one, is bucking the trend. Their headcount is at an all-time high. So, Rituparna, in your understanding, are there outliers here? And what are they doing differently if they are outliers?
There would be outliers. I think we've seen that across industries. Whenever you go through some of these kind of trends, there'll be one or two. Could be, there's a possibility that there are certain deals that these companies have for which they do need talent and a specific kind of talent, because of which they are hiring. So if you see that the most of the reduction in numbers have happened in organizations which are really, really large in terms of manpower strength. So that doesn't mean that there is absolutely no hiring going on in the other, a little more mid-size or smaller organizations. But I do feel even in these organizations, they're very, very specific to demand. I don't think they are doing, like, IT industry is known for preemptive hiring. I think that's an absolute no-no right now.
Right.
So only when there is a deal in the pocket which you need to service and guaranteed is when they hire.
Right.
So
this would be a direct correlation with the kind of pipeline of deals that they have, the kind of expected revenues. It's a direct correlation and you would see it up front. But also, and I'll come back to that point, but Rituparna, there was a whole lot of debate going around about moonlighting after we got hit by the pandemic and then getting back to work from the work from home situation. It became a challenge for IT companies to get their employees back in the offices. How has that bit contributed to the shrinking headcount today? Are we seeing more going off the payroll, signing up contracts instead with tech companies? Is that happening?
Vikram, I believe this current situation will lead to a lot of innovation and transformation, both in the industry, the way they run their businesses, their business models, as well as the way the talent in this industry behave. So I know that there was a lot of resistance in terms of moonlighting, and I, for one, have been also talking about this, that everything's fine with moonlighting as long as there is transparency at both ends. In terms of the process of doing it, you will see that there would be a larger propensity in the days to come where the employment relationship will become far more flexible, because
but there was so much resistance. Rituparna, there was so much resistance from the companies when it came to that.
Absolutely, but I feel that crunch situation like this is essentially the test of time. Now, organization will, I feel, honestly, I'll have to see that will lean more towards flexible work arrangements, probably will be more open and liberal in terms of such concepts, and at both sides. You will see a lot of changes that are going to happen in IT industry, and we should all be prepared for it.
Are you seeing indicators of this, Mahantesh, from what you're hearing from a TCS, an Infosys, an HCL, Wipro, Tech Mahindra, even a Persistent? They've all seen a fall in their headcounts. Tell us, what are the strongest indicators to you that you've noticed from the kind of commentary coming out of these managements about the shrinking headcount this time in earnings season that would help us understand whether this is a phenomenon that is going to last, or is it going to turn around for the better And if there are the kind of deals that are expected, like you were talking about, these revenue projections, for example, those would be a good indicator to tell us about what we can expect by way of hiring.
Primarily, I think the issue that most of these companies are highlighting is related to right kind of talent that they require. And COVID was a period where they went in with having a large bench strength, because those were uncertain periods. They weren't very sure which set of employees will be able to deliver and in what time. So when the COVID ended, most of these companies ended up with a large bench strength, and the utilizations were really falling, and that eventually led to actually the margin shrinkage that I was talking about. So the companies are now unwinding that bench strength that they had, and probably this thing points to the fact that the unwinding process will kind of get near complete in under a year's time, not even a year, before which we will see revised or hiring happening, or resumption of normal hiring activities happening. But I must mention here that the basic industry is also transforming itself, because the new challenges that these companies are talking about relate to AI coming into picture. Most of the companies are also talking about the discretionary spends that you talked about in terms of deferment of discretionary trends and spends, and we are also seeing the third phenomenon, which is related to actually the deal wins happening in areas which don't necessarily require high degree of manpower. Which are, let's say, like non-BPO kind of deals that they are entering. You talked of LTTS. Many of the engineering services companies are seeing large deal wins happening, but the discretionary spends, which are related to primarily support services, BPO kind of services, are not happening.
Right.
I think this is what the companies are talking about: higher unwinding of bench strength,
Right. Yes.
low discretionary spends,
Correct.
and specific deal wins related to
So what the
engineering services.
industry requires, from what Mahantesh is saying, Rituparna, the needs of the industry are changing, and you spoke about it, about, a transition period for the IT industry. That also means that the kind of talent that the industry requires is changing. Is that talent available right now on campuses? Are they looking out for them?
Definitely, the requirement of talent is changing. I think earlier, tech industry were essentially looking at what I call foot soldiers in technology parlance, a lot of them, because that essentially counted as billable resources. Customers today, as I sense, are also changing the way they are deciding to work with a lot of the services companies in tech. And most of the companies that you see in the list in terms of where they are reducing numbers are largely IT services companies. So it's I feel the bill rate model itself is set to change. You will see the deal structure. I mean, that's my soothsaying into the future is what I see, that the deals itself will undergo a lot of change. So all those bottom of the pillar jobs in technology, which needed a large number of people, in any case, will be replaced through automation. So, but yes, there are higher order deals which will be coming, and that's essentially where I feel the industry transforming. They'll pick these extremely skill-rich projects which they need to deliver, and for that they need very skilled talent, niche talent, specialized talent. Just being an engineer is probably not good enough in some of the job roles that I foresee in the future. So you will see higher quality jobs, maybe fewer jobs emerging in technology. They'll also be higher paying, but much, much fewer in number.
Right.
Do we have the talent for all those skill sets? I believe no, not so much. I mean, can we prepare for it? And that's honestly the message I have. I keep on telling talent that earlier, anyone and everyone thought that they could find a place. I don't think that's going to be the case.
Right.
I feel that you really need to be excellent, brilliant, specialized, and constantly reskilling yourself.
You need to be ahead of the curve. And this is for the education sector as well, to be able to get the kind of talent the IT industry is going to go to campuses. If they don't find it over there, The hiring is going to reduce and the headcount is going to shrink. But at this point in time, that is the need of the hour. When you go through a period of transition, an industry will have to adapt and talent will have to constantly keep upskilling, something that Rituparna has been speaking about as well. We're completely out of time on this edition of Business at 9, but Rituparna and Mahantesh, thank you very much for joining us with your perspective on this all-important subject. Thanks indeed for joining us. With that,